Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Instead of an alarm clock, Jews use a shofar to awaken people. You know the famous story of this Jew who moves to Israel on a kibbutz, and he wants to know the time, so he doesn't have a watch, so he goes over to a person. Can you tell me what time it is? Sure, if they're going to be nice enough to tell him the time, no big deal. But this becomes a habit. Every few hours he would stop someone and ask him, what time is it? And the people got a little annoyed after a few weeks. So they decided they're going to give him a birthday gift, a watch. And the birthday comes around and they give him a watch, and he looks at it and he says, what do I need this for? And they said, well, how do you tell time? He says, what do you mean? I ask people what time it is, and that's how I find out the time. I don't need a watch. He said, but what do you do in the middle of the night if you have to know what time it is? He says, I use a shofar. Shofar? How do you tell time with a shofar? He said, I open the window and I start blowing the shofar, and within seconds people are screaming at me, it's 2 a.m, what are you doing? So it's a metaphor where at the time of the year, the month of Elul, before Rosh Hashanah, and it's a time to awaken ourselves, to come back to God, to Torah, to the mitzvahs, and it's a custom from today onward till the day before Rosh Hashanah to sound the shofar as a preparation for the shofar of Rosh Hashanah. So I'm going to blow the shofar now, and hopefully it'll awaken everyone, including myself. It's no skill. The skill is to be inspired, not to blow it. So we're coming close to the end of Ethics of the Fathers. We're in chapter 6, Mishnah 9, and it's part of a chapter that devotes its content to the importance of Torah study. As I mentioned in almost every week that we discuss this, that in Judaism, unlike any other religion and any other culture, the highest premium is placed on the study of Torah itself. Certainly, Torah has to lead to action. You can't just study about how to be a good person and not be good in practice. But the study of Torah itself has intrinsic value. And in some cases, it trumps all other mitzvahs. And the law is as follows, that if you have an opportunity to do a mitzvah or to study Torah, Torah is also a mitzvah, I'm talking about other mitzvahs. If someone else can do it, let's start the other way. If no one else could do it, person breaks down, gets a flat tire, and you're the only one who can help that person, then even though you're studying Torah, you interrupt your study to help the person. No one else could do it. But if someone else could help the other person, you're not allowed to interrupt your study of Torah. The Torah takes precedence. So this Mishnah illustrates the point in the most dramatic way. It's a radical expression of this mitzvah. That means that there are certain times where you can see how Torah study trumps all other considerations. This is a story. It's unusual that the Mishnah will tell a story in trying to teach this lesson. Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma. Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma was a great sage, although he's not mentioned too often in the Talmud. He lived a long life from before the temple's destruction, we're talking about the second temple, till much later. He was around when the Romans clamped down on Judaism and took the lives of 10 great rabbis, not all at one time, and one of them was Hananiah ben Teradion, who was burnt alive, and Rabbi Kisma was the one who he came to for guidance. So this Rabbi Kisma lived a very long time, and he straddled the period of the temple and the post-temple era. And from everything we know about him, he was totally immersed in the study of Torah. And this story illustrates it very, very dramatically. He says, once I was walking by the way when a man met me and greeted me, and I greeted him. He said to me, "Rabbi, where are you from?" Didn't ask him his name. He said, "Where are you from?" I said to him, "I'm from a great city of sages and scribes." And he said to me, "Rabbi, would you consider living with us in our place? I would give you 1,000 denarii of gold and precious stones and pearls." I said to him, "My son, even if you were to give me all the silver and gold, precious stones and pearls that are in the world, I would not dwell anywhere except in a place of Torah. From when a man passes away, there accompany him neither gold nor silver, nor precious stones nor pearls. What do you take with you but Torah and good deeds alone? As it is said in Proverbs, when you walk, it will lead you. When you lie down, it will watch over you. When you are awake, it will talk with you. When you walk, it will lead you as in this world. When you lie down, it will watch over you in the grave. Your Torah that you study here stays with you after you leave this world. And when you are awake, it will talk with you in the world to come. And the world to come means when the dead come back to life in the Messianic age. And thus it is written in the book of Psalms by David, king of Israel, I prefer the teaching you proclaim to thousands of pieces of gold and silver. In other words, I prefer the Torah over all the gold and silver. And it also says, mine is the silver. God says this. Mine is the silver and mine is the gold, says the Lord of hosts. It's something that belongs to God. It doesn't belong to us. So what this is telling us over here simply is that Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma was asked to move to become the rabbi in another city, and he refused because he said, I'm not interested in your money. I want to be someone who's studying Torah, and I live in a place where I can do that comfortably, and therefore I'm not going to change. So there are a lot of questions over here, and we could spend days on this Mishnah alone. It says over here he was traveling. He was once traveling. What does it mean he was once traveling? Should have said, I was traveling. Apparently, as commentators point out, Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma rarely traveled. He was so devoted to the study of Torah that he stayed in his city together with all the other sages and studied Torah and didn't take the opportunity to travel. One time it happened that he traveled and he was given this proposal to move to another city. Some say, the Abarbanel says that this is also a metaphor. It's a metaphor that we're all traveling. Life is a journey. And very often in our journey, we are given opportunities to veer off course, to go in another direction. Now, every person, every Jew in particular, but every human being has a special mission, and no two human beings are alike. That means while we may share many different things, and we share a lot, there's always something special about each individual. That's why you came into this world. Some people come into this world to teach Torah. Some come into this world to do other mitzvahs. But once you know that this is your path, there are always going to be someone who's going to meet you, someone who's going to stop you and say, you know what, maybe you should change course. You had enough of this. Maybe you should start doing something else. And here we learn from this Mishnah, we learn that no, if this is your mission in life, if this is your journey, don't be distracted by others, no matter what they tell you, how appealing deviating will be, no matter how good it'll be. That sounds great. If this is your mission, if this is why you were chosen, stick to it. Now, how do you know what you're chosen for? That's a little bit more difficult than than the other challenge. This challenge to figure out what you're chosen for. But if you are doing something that's objectively consistent with God's teachings in Torah, and you're good at it, and you specialize in that, that's a sign that this is why you're here. Every soul comes down with a special mission, and once you discover your mission, stick to it. Don't try to deviate, even if they entice you with gold and silver, which is also a metaphor. Doesn't necessarily mean literally gold and silver, but whatever arguments they will give you, this is not your mission. Your mission, and the famous story is told, I think I told the story not too long ago, about two Jews, a rich Jew and a poor Jew, were in town, and the rich Jew had a custom that every Friday night he would invite poor people to his table, to his Shabbos table, and he had a whole bunch of people that he fed. And the poor Jew just ate bread and water. He didn't have much more. And it was before Shabbos, Friday afternoon, and a horse and wagon got caught in the mud, just couldn't get out of the mud. So the poor Jew, the rich Jew, sees this and he says, I'm going to do a mitzvah. And instead of calling the AAA, or whatever equivalent they had in those days, he decides, I'm going to be the hero. I'm going to schlep this wagon out of the mud. Not only did he not succeed in schlepping the wagon out of the mud, he ripped all his clothing. He was bruised from head to toe. The horse kicked him, and he was a total mess. His body and his clothing were covered with mud, and he was so broken and weary and weak from it that he didn't go to shul that Friday night. He went to his hotel. It was out of town, and he slept the whole Shabbos. Meanwhile, the guests in shul, the poor people, were waiting for an invitation, but the rich man wasn't there to invite them. But this one poor Jew who decided, you know what? I'm going to have a mitzvah. I'm going to invite these poor people. And what does he give them? Bread and water. And when their souls came to heaven, it was decided that their souls have to come back on the earth again, because the rich man, instead of inviting poor people to his home, thought he could schlep a wagon out of the mud, and he messed up. And the poor man, instead of schlepping the wagon out of the mud, decided he's going to act like he's a rich person and invite people to his home. Each person has to know what his or her mission is and stick to it. It doesn't mean you can't do other things as well, but you have to specialize in that area because that's what you were chosen for. Now, if you read the term used here in the Hebrew, in English they translate it as a man met me. But the word used in Hebrew, paga, also has another meaning. It means he affronted me, he degraded me, he hurt me. What does that mean? It means that Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma was so steeped in Torah that when he saw this man coming to him, he realized that this man was not there to make his life more meaningful, but to bring him down, to drag him down to a lower level. So he actually hurt me. And the question is asked, one of the teachings in Judaism is that you should always try to greet someone before they greet you. Always say Shalom Aleichem before the other person says it. Why does Rabbi Yossi not greet this other man? Why didn't he greet him? It says over here, this man greeted me, and then I greeted him. Why didn't Rabbi Yossi greet him first? A contemporary of Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, is quoted as saying that a person should always try to be the first person to greet another person, no matter who it is. And Rabbi Yossi didn't greet him. So there are several explanations given. One explanation given by the Maharal, who lived about 450 years ago, that he was what was he doing when he was traveling? What does a rabbi do when he travels? He studies Torah. He was so engrossed in the study of Torah that he was oblivious. He was oblivious to the fact that there was a person traveling next to him, until the person greeted him, and it got him out of his reverie, and he says, oh, yeah, hi. But he couldn't initiate the greeting because he was so absorbed in Torah. And that's why this man asked him to come to his city, saying, you know what, you come to our city, we'll make you a rabbi in our city. I see you're steeped in Torah. We could use a person who knows Torah. Which then begs the question, why did Rabbi Yossi so resist that? The man wanted him to become a rabbi in his city. We'll soon see about that. The Rebbe explains that the reason why he didn't greet him is because this man acted very disrespectfully. The way he greeted him showed that he had no real respect for him, and he was trying to get him to compromise his own values. How do we know that? Because what did he tell him? He says, if you come to us, you'll get a lot of gold, silver, and money, and pearls. When you offer a rabbi, the first thing you tell him, I'm going to give you a lot of money. What are you telling this rabbi? That you're in it for the money. True, rabbis are all very wealthy, but if they're in it for the money, they shouldn't be in that job. Because I suspect you can make more money not being a rabbi. But when a guy tells you, come to our town and we'll pay you I'll give you so much money, you're telling the person that we don't respect you as a altruistic, high-level spiritual person. You're in it like everyone else. You want to make a buck. You want to make more money. So we'll give you more money than you're making today. So he really insulted him and affronted him. And that explains why Rabbi Yossi rejected the offer. The Maharal explains, let's take the offer in its own 2 feet. The offer was, come to our city, live with us. What did he mean by that? He meant to say, when the rabbi says, I come from a city of great sages, of great wise people, he meant to then come to our city to be a rabbi. Yes?
But if rabbi has invitation to other city and invite him and say you will have bigger congregation, you will have more money, and
he didn't tell him that. If he told him you'll have a big congregation, you'll have a lot of students, Rabbi Yossi might have said, yeah, maybe it's a good idea. But the first thing he tells him, you'll come to our city, you'll make a lot of money. That's not a very, that's a very insulting thing.
And about good teacher, good rabbi, in general, good teacher, when sometimes teacher has invitation to some places, come to him students from other places,
right,
and he make more and more students.
Right.
But he has freedom, he has opportunity.
Right. That would be a very good offer if he would tell him this. If you come to our place, you'll get more students. You'll get people who are not interested in Judaism. You'll get them interested. You'll establish a Chabad house in your community. If he told him all these things, he might have influenced him. He might have gotten him to change his opinion. But the only thing he tells him, you'll make a lot of money. Yeah. In other words, he's trying to tell him, that's probably all you care about is money, and you'll make more money in our community. Now, the Maharal says that Rabbi Yossi sensed that he wants him to be a rabbi, but what kind of a rabbi? A rabbi who is subordinate to the community. One of the things about one of the flaws in the rabbinate today, and this is across the board, is rabbis are hired by a synagogue. Who controls the rabbi? Who controls whom? The rabbi controls the synagogue, or the people who hired him control him?
People who hired him.
Okay, that's the big flaw. Because the rabbi is supposed to set the tone. He's supposed to lay down the law, and he's supposed to tell the people what is right and what is wrong. But if the people are the ones who control the rabbi can't really do what he has to do. You know, they tell this joke. A new rabbi comes to town, he gives a sermon on what's important to give charity. So the president calls him over. He says, you can't talk about charity here because there are a lot of rich people who don't like to give charity and you'll insult them. Okay, I won't talk about charity. Next week he talks about Shabbos. He says, you can't talk about Shabbos because one of our members owns a big department store that's their main business is Shabbos. So you stop talking about Shabbos. Well, I'll talk about kosher next week. He tries to do that. No, you can't because one of our members owns McDonald's. And And if you talk about kosher, he'll be insulted. Don't talk about kosher. Okay, he speaks about supporting the Jews in Israel. No, you can't talk about that because it's politically incorrect, because the politicians don't like Israel. And after about 20 weeks of talking about different subjects of Judaism, he can't talk about any of them. So he tells the president, Mr. President, what should I talk about? Rabbi, I'm surprised you're asking me. Speak about Judaism. That's a joke, but it's a sad joke, because that's exactly what happens in virtually all synagogues. It certainly happens in the temples, but even in the Orthodox synagogues, where rabbis are employees, rabbis feel constrained, and very often rabbis who don't care and they speak their mind have to look for another position eventually. They can't stay where they can. Yes.
It's one point. Other point. I was member of Temple Sinai.
We're not going to name temples.
Temple Sinai. And
we're striking that out.
I understand. It was near my house. I like this Barry Grant. He was a nice guy, and he respected me, a musician, and it was okay. But when he left, came as a rabbi, former rabbi in military and attorney, and he started to speak his sermons. For example, what Jewish have to better have married with different religion. It will make our world stronger, and we have to support immigrants to Israel from Africa, because Israel show how they are a great nation and something like this. And through me and Diana, we stand up. Diana had great speech about his vision. In a couple of days, board of Sinai stop his service in the synagogue. So sometimes board do something too.
Sometimes the board is more religious than the rabbi.
Yes.
Yes, so that it happens. That happens. That happens. Yes. Okay. It's an exception to the rule, but it happens.
Excuse me. And after that came Rabbi. He was very shortly, but he didn't know what to talk about, and he talked about members of his family.
Okay. Anyhow, there's a statement in the Talmud that describes the way Jewish leadership and leadership in general will fall down, will collapse. It says the face of the generation, it means the leaders will become like the face of a dog. Leaders will be like dogs. What exactly does that mean? So one of the great European rabbis, Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, once explained that the nature of a dog is when you walk your dog, the dog always runs ahead of you. So who's the leader? The dog is the leader. But when he comes to a fork in the road, what does the dog do? He turns around to see where the person wants him to go. That's the kind of leadership we have, where the leaders, it sounds like they're leading, but they're not leading. They're looking to see, what do the people want me to do? They're not really leading, they're following their congregants. And that's the kind of leadership this guy wanted. We want a rabbi, we want a leader, but we want a leader that we can buy with our money. We pay him a salary, we'll give him his gold and silver, we'll give him a nice salary, we'll give him a nice home, but we're going to tell him what he can do and what he can't do. And that's what has become with leadership even today. Especially today, I would say, and there are many exceptions to the rule, but that's the general rule, and that's why Rabbi Yossi didn't accept this proposal. He says, I don't want to be a rabbi in name only, a leader in name only. I want to be the one who could lead, and if I can't lead, I don't want to be here. You know, it's interesting. According to Jewish law, most opinions, you cannot fire a rabbi. So when you want to get rid of your rabbi, you just make his life miserable. And that's what happens in many communities. Even if you signed a contract, the contract can only obligate the congregation, but it doesn't obligate the rabbi, really. He can stay for life, but it would be foolish for him to stay for life if the people who hired him don't want him. But the concept is that if you're choosing someone to be your guide and teach you what's right and what's wrong, you shouldn't have the power to fire him, because that means that you're controlling him, what he's going to say. So you could control him by paying him, you control him by having the ability to fire him. The commentary called Midrash Shmuel says the following. When he went on this trip, this is the first time he went on a trip, or very rare that he would ever go on a trip, and the first thing that happens to him, he gets a proposal to move. He realized that this proposal was coming from the wrong side. We have two inclinations, the Talmud tells us. We have a Yetzer Tov, a good inclination, and a Yetzer Hara, an evil inclination. Very often we have ideas come to our mind, and we're not sure where it's coming from. Is it coming from the good inclination, or it's coming from the evil inclination? Now, of course, if it tells you to go rob a bank, it's coming from the evil inclination. But very often, the choices are not that clear-cut. Here it was not very clear-cut. Should he stay in his town where he has all these great sages and everyone is studying Torah, the place is saturated with Torah, or should he go to another city where there's very little Torah study, but maybe he can change things there? So he didn't know initially what he should choose, and he decided to choose what he was doing before. And this reminds me of a story told of Rabbi Nachum of Chernobyl. You know, Chernobyl is famous because of the nuclear accident that happened there, but we always knew about Chernobyl as a major city. I don't know if it's a big city or population-wise, but it was a very big city in Jewish history, because that's where one of the greatest Hasidic masters lived, Rabbi Nachum of Chernobyl, and his son, Rabbi Mordechai of Chernobyl. Rabbi Nachum of Chernobyl was a disciple of the Baal Shem Tov, and later of the Maggid of Mizrich. And he came to Chernobyl. He was very poor, extremely poor. He was penniless. He had nothing. And when people would come for asking for his blessing, they would always leave money for him. So if he kept all that money for himself, he would have been well-to-do. But he gave it all away. He squandered everything that he got, he gave to charity, and he left almost nothing for himself. And his family members were not so thrilled about that, but they never really told him anything. Once a very wealthy man comes to him, and this is a time when he needed money to marry off one of his daughters. And a man came and he left him, I think it was about 200 or 300 rubles, or whatever denomination they used in those days. And he decided, and then a poor man came and needed that amount of money. No, I think the poor man came to him, and the poor man said, "I need that amount of money to marry off my daughter." It wasn't Rabbi Nachum Chernobyl, the poor man came, and Rabbi Nachum decided to give it to him. But before he gave it to him, he said his family members told him, "Why are you going to give it to this poor man? Why don't you divide it up? You take 300 rubles, divide it up give it to 10 different charities, and keep 1/10 of it for yourself, for the family." And he decided, no, he's not going to do it that way. He's going to give it all away to one person. Now, if you were asked the question, most people would have said, divide it up and take a little for yourself. But he reasoned that this case was different. Why? He says, because when he originally had the thought to give it away to one person, why didn't he think of the idea of maybe to divide it up? Only when his family members said, keep some of it yourself, only then did he think about giving it to many other people as well. In other words, some people say when you have different thoughts, your first thought is usually the right one. That's not 100% true rule. It's true in many cases that the first idea that comes to your mind is the right one. But his argument was like this: when I had the idea of giving it all away and not thinking about myself, it didn't occur to me to break it up into many parts and to give many people. It's only when I thought of it, what I'm going to gain from it, then I start to rationalize, you know what, maybe it's better to give it to many people. In other words, when you have two choices and one choice involves your own selfish interests, it could very well be that it's coming from the wrong side. And that's what Rabbi Yossi was saying. His whole life, he never had any other thoughts of going to any other community. All of a sudden, when he's offered money and there's something in it for himself, all of a sudden there's a thought, maybe he should come to another community. Maybe it's a bigger challenge. Maybe it's a better thing for him to do. And he realized that it was not coming from the right place. And according to I think it's the Maharal, this person is unidentified, doesn't have a name. So he says it was the Satan himself. In another version, it was Eliyahu Hanavi who was testing him. Sometimes we're tested by the Satan, and sometimes we're tested by Eliyahu Hanavi. The difference is, Satan really makes it hard for us to pass the test, Eliyahu makes it easier. But either way, that's what happens in life. Some people think that we're only tested whether to do something right or wrong. No, sometimes we're tested whether to do one right thing over another right thing. Just because something is right doesn't mean it's right in this particular situation. Maybe there's another avenue that we should be going.
Excuse me, Rabbi.
Yeah.
We talk about this, and we talk about foundation of our life, very big foundation of our life. It's family. And if you are head of family, you have to think about members of your family too, not about all other.
Sure, but why didn't he think about that first? He
didn't think about his family.
Oh no, he always thought about other people first. You're right, because his family were in that mode themselves as well. That's what Hasidic Rebbes would always give everything away. And their family was the last. The other people came first. That's the way it always was. The other people always came first. And that's why they were so respected and revered. And that's why they had such great influence, because they had no selfish bone in their bodies. They always thought about, what can I do for others? And that's why when he decided to split it up, which might have been the best approach, but it only occurred to him when he thought of what he can get from it himself. So he realized it was coming from the wrong place. Now, I just want to go on. It cites King David. King David, who didn't value wealth. Now, sometimes you could say a poor person doesn't value wealth because he doesn't have it. But King David had wealth. He had it, and he realized it was nothing compared to Torah. And then he says over here that when it comes to wealth, you don't take it with you. You don't take your silver and gold with you. You take the Torah and mitzvahs that you do, that you take with you. There's a famous story that was going around about 25 years ago. I don't know if it's a true story or it's just an anecdote, but it's a story that is told about a certain very wealthy Jew. Some people say it was Mr. Reichman. I don't know if you heard of the name Reichman. Reichman was a family of multi-billionaires, lived in Toronto. They lost a lot of their money. They're only now they're only worth hundreds of millions, but they used to be worth, I think, $8, $9, $10 billion. And one of them passed away, and he left a will. And two wills. One will was to be opened right after his passing, and the other one was to be opened 30 days later. The will they opened up right away. In his will he says, I want to be buried with a certain pair of socks that I really enjoyed wearing. And it's his last will. You always try to respect the last wish of a dying person. So the family was about to bury him with that pair of socks. But the Chevra Kadisha, the burial society, says, oh, you can't bury people with socks. That's not Jewish custom. So they said, but this is his last wish. How could we go against his last wish? He says, well, we'll have to speak to the rabbi. They spoke to the rabbis in charge, and the rabbi said, absolutely not. You can't bury this pair of socks. Okay, they had no choice. They tried their best, and they didn't get it. The rabbis didn't allow it. 30 days later, they opened up the second will. Second will says, you see, even a pair of socks you can't take with you. He wanted his children to know that all the wealth that he had, he couldn't take it, not even a pair of socks.
Traveler's check.
Traveler's checks. Someone suggests, I don't remember who it was, that what was going on over here? Why do you ask a person, the first time you meet a person, which city are you from? You should have asked him, what's your name? Do you have a family? I mean, it's strange to ask which city you're from. So the theory is that this was right after the destruction of the temple. The Romans were really ruthless in the way they controlled, they tyrannized, they murdered many Jewish rabbis because they taught Torah publicly. Rabbi Akiva was one of them. Rabbi Hanania ben Traudian was another one who Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma mentored. So this guy was asking him, which city are you from? In other words, are you from a city where the Romans are really clamping down and not allowing Torah study? Or are you in a city where there's freedom? And the rabbi said, I'm in a city where there's everyone studying Torah. No one cares about the Romans. So he says, look, if you come to our city is, in other words, he was trying to say that in spite of everything, they're still studying Torah. They're risking their lives. And this man was saying, come to our city, we have freedom. We have freedom. And the rabbi was not impressed. He didn't care for the freedom. And this is a lesson that Jews talk about freedom. Freedom is not all that it's made out to be. We were much better off living under tyranny where they allowed us to study Torah than to live in a free country where people are assimilated and don't study Torah. We only cherish freedom, and we do cherish freedom. I'm not going to deny that. We cherish freedom and we appreciate it, and we're grateful to God, and we're very appreciative to the government of the United States for giving us freedom. But the freedom, without the ability to translate that into living as a Jew, is inferior, is much less important than to have tyranny where we can live as Jews. Sometimes tyranny doesn't let you live as a Jew either. In the Soviet Union, tyranny didn't allow us to live as Jews. But I'm talking about before the Soviet Union. The Alter Rebbe favored the Tsar over Napoleon. It's not that because the Tsar was more righteous than Napoleon. They were both evil people. But the Tsar didn't take the Jews away from their Judaism. Napoleon was going to do that. Napoleon wanted to assimilate the Jews, and he did. He succeeded. And that's why French and German Jews mostly assimilated, and almost nothing is left of their descendants. If you see this descendants of German and French Jews of 200 years ago, you can count them on your fingers. Russian Jews, except for the Soviet Union, which combined tyranny with assimilation, that's a different story. The question is asked. We'll go a few more minutes. The Torah, there's a story of Bilam. Bilam was a prophet, an evil prophet, who tried to curse the Jews. But God didn't let him. And when Balak, the king of Moab, who hired him, was upset at him, he says, I tried to give you all this honor and you're not doing what I'm asking of you. What did Bilam answer? Bilam answered, if you give me all the gold and silver, a whole house full of gold and silver, I can't go against God. And he's faulted for saying that. As our sages tell us, you can see what Bilam really wanted. Bilam wanted money. And he just said, I have no choice. I can't do what I want to do to get the money because God doesn't allow me to do it. So when Bilam says, I'll give you I would have. You can give me a full house of gold and silver. It won't change my attitude. He's faulted for that. And Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma, when he says, even if you were to give me all the silver and gold, precious stones and pearls that are in the world, I would not dwell anywhere. He's also talking about gold and silver. So what's the difference between him and Bilam? So there are many answers to the question. Answer number one, it depends who says it. You can tell whether something is said in a positive way or a negative way just by knowing the person who says it. If it's a villain like Bilam who says it, you can see that he really wants money more than anything else. If Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma says it, you know he's only using it as a way of responding to what the other person said. A second answer, Bilam sounds like he would want the gold, and he was only prevented by God, but he really would want it. Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma never said that I would want the gold, but I have no choice. He just categorically denied that he ever wants the gold. Another thing, Balak didn't even mention gold. Balak mentioned honor. I've given you honor. And Bilam says, even if you gave me gold. So you could see what he really wanted. Many people, why do they want honor? Because through honor they get money. Some people say, why do they want money? Because they get honor. Bilam wanted both. He wanted the honor, but he also wanted the money. So Balak didn't offer him money, and he brings in money. You can see what he really wanted. But in this case, the guy offers him money, and he says, I don't care about money. And also, Rabbi Yossi says, if you give me all the money in the world, that's not realistic. This man couldn't give him all the money in the world. So you see, he was using hyperbole. He was exaggerating. Bilam was not exaggerating. He says, if you fill my house with gold and silver, that's something that could have been done. But the main point over here is that Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma was saying that I want only Torah. But why wouldn't he go to that city and spread Torah? And the answer is that there are certain people whose life's mission is just Torah study. And that's what's going on, the debate in Israel. We speak about this almost every week. But here's the criticism about what's happening in Israel and the defense at the same time. If you have a choice of studying Torah day and night, or becoming a rabbi who does outreach, which is what Chabad rabbis do, 99% of them. And yet in Israel you have tens of thousands of people who are just studying Torah day and night. From this mission it seems that they're doing the right thing, and we're doing the wrong thing. We should be studying Torah day and night and not going out and doing outreach. And the answer is no. We're both not necessarily doing the right thing. And yet we might both be doing the right thing. And I'll give you an example. When a person would get married in Chabad, a rabbi would get married, he would spend a year or two learning Torah and then looking for a job, whether it was becoming a Chabad rabbi, whether it was becoming a teacher, a principal, or going to business or whatever else, going to the professions. Those people who really wanted to study Torah uninterrupted could stay longer. But if you considered the other option, you would have to leave. And I can speak from personal experience. When I was learning in the Kollel, I was planning on staying much longer, or at least another year, maybe 2 more years. And then I was asked to come to Buffalo by a very persistent rabbi. And I said no. Adamantly, no, I'm not interested, absolutely not. I'm planning to study at least another year. So this rabbi was very smart, and he says to me, why don't you ask the Rebbe? I couldn't argue with that. You know, if the Rebbe tells me, and I asked the Rebbe, and the Rebbe says, yes, go to Buffalo.
Good for us.
So,
Helped us.
so then I discovered that, and if I knew this, I wouldn't have asked. But I discovered that the Rebbe measured your whether you go on to become an outreach rabbi, or as we call it, an in-reach, or you continue learning Torah, is based on 3 words in Hebrew: nafsho chashka b'Torah. Your soul craves the learning of Torah. You crave it so much that it's not even a question. It's not even a question what you should be doing. If you have a question, that means your purpose in life is not to just study Torah all day, but to go out and do what you have to do to help other Jews. If you're so passionate about Torah that you don't even have a question, it's like, do you have a question whether you're going to eat food today? You don't have a question about it. It's natural. You can't survive without it. If you start asking the question, did I eat today? My wife has that. But most people don't ask the question, did I eat today? I don't remember if I ate. You don't ask that because that's part of your very existence. Well, if you don't have a question about learning Torah, then you should be learning Torah and nothing else. You shouldn't be asking questions, even though the question is legitimate. Now in Israel, I don't know how many people are just studying Torah, but how many of them are studying Torah because their soul craves it so much they can't bear doing anything else, or because that's part of a system? Dr. Berkowitz, what do you think? Is it part of the system, or is it because they crave so much they can't bear doing anything else?
Yesh v'yesh.
So yesh v'yesh means there are some who are this way and some who are that way. That's where I think they're going wrong, by making it, this is what you have to do. Well, if someone tells me I have to do that, that means I'm a second-class citizen if I don't do it. Then I do it, but not because your soul is really so consumed with the passion to learn Torah. There might be a percentage. I don't know what the percentage is, and I have no right to decide who really wants it and who really doesn't want it. But if they would have the system that if you don't have that desire, that passion, you shouldn't be studying Torah, you should go to the army, you should engage in supporting your family, then they should be doing that. So while they're not wrong, what's wrong is if you are not in that category where your soul desires Torah, because there's a need in the Jewish community for rabbis who teach Torah, who help other people, not just people who study Torah. And even though the Rebbe was the champion of outreach, of in-reach, of going out and helping other Jews, and that's why there are 4,000 or 5,000 Chabad centers in the world, and that's the dream of every chassid, to be a shliach of the Rebbe. Nevertheless, I remember hearing a very prominent rabbi in Israel, Rabbi Goldvicht. He was the head of the yeshiva of Keren B'Yavna, I think. So he comes over to the Rebbe at a Farbrengen between talks, and he says, my son is learning Torah. He's married. He's learning Torah for a few years, and people want him to go out to get a job. And the Rebbe says, no, he should stay in the yeshiva, or the kol, whatever it's called. And he shouldn't get a job. So the rabbi thought the Rebbe meant he shouldn't get a job becoming a plumber or a lawyer or a doctor. He said, no, a job as a rabbi, as a congregational rabbi or a teacher of Torah. So the Rebbe says, no, I know. No, he should sit and study Torah just passionately and not interrupt. That goes against everything the Rebbe has taught us. No, it doesn't go against everything the Rebbe taught us. He knew that person was so passionate about Torah that he was a candidate for staying and learning and not doing anything else. We need such people. That's Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma. That was his mission in life, and that's why he refused to leave his city to go to another city. If you're not that passionate, then that's not the right approach. So this is the approach for people who have that passion. Any questions?
Why does he mention scribes?
A scribe...
Putting them as on the same level as rabbis.
A scribe doesn't mean what we think a scribe means today. Someone who writes mezuzahs or tefillin or Torah scrolls.
Like Baruch, right? With Yirmiyahu.
It's a teacher of Torah.
Not Sofrim.
It says that why were they called Sofrim? Because they used to count the words of the Torah. They were experts in every little nuance of Torah. So it's another category of teacher of Torah. Not necessarily a scribe who writes, who checks mezuzahs, which is a respectable position.
I had a scribe, right?
Right, but his scribe was a student of his. He taught him Torah. He happened to write the Torah scrolls as well.
There were students who, Kappa, certainly for the Rebbe, right? The Rebbe gave the drush and Shabbos to the people who
Right.
did afterwards.
But they were there. Right, the jealousy of scribes increases wisdom. So there it doesn't mean scribes who just write, it means teachers of Torah who transmit the Torah. I blew the shofar. Didn't wake you up, apparently. Okay, everyone have a good day.
There's no class on Sunday.
Right, I'll be out of...
Friday?
Friday, no. I'll be out of town Thursday through Sunday.
Monday, is it 7 or 8?
It's 7, but it's going to change because it's going to conflict with Mincha and Ma'ariv, so it's going to go to this coming Sunday. It'll be still Monday. I mean, it'll still be 7, but it'll be a shorter class, a 15-minute class, and then it'll go to 8.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I would